We'll just give everybody another minute or two to join, and then we'll get started. Okay, we'll get started. My name is Tony Facenda, and thank you for joining part 5 of our AEC digital series. Today, we'll be talking about how to create a custom viewer in Unity Reflect, and our speakers will be Jack Strongatharm, the AEC named accounts for EMEA, and Fred Moreau, our AEC solutions engineer.
Okay, great. Great to be back with everybody again. Those weeks are flying by, aren't they? It's like Groundhog Day. Every day is exactly the same, apart from on special Wednesdays. So, welcome to everybody. We're on to next session. Remember, anybody wanting to ask questions, we will answer them throughout. Use the questions and answers panel so you can get a direct answer. If there's anything just general for the chat, that's fine as well. But specific questions, put them in the Q&A panel. And between myself and my colleagues that are online, we'll get you the answers. Remember, this is all recorded, so relax and take it in. There's a lot of detail that comes through from my colleague Fred. So watch it back, slow it down, pause it, always helps. And then remember, there's a post-webinar survey that comes out. Fill it in, and there's always a little prize there. So we've been kind of working forward to this point, really, of being able to understand Unity, work with materials, lighting, work with metadata, create some functionality, and then control it in some user interface, so buttons, sliders, and the general kind of ways of interfacing with an application. So now we're going to flip it now. We're going to bring all that knowledge and bring it into an application that will run in runtime, and then publishing through Unity Reflect is able to receive that model and then show it with your functionality at the same time. So it's definitely a different way of doing it. So you got myself again, Jack Strongatharm over in the UK, and my colleague Fred, who's over in Paris. Okay, so we're going to focus on this viewer. So just a little minor recap. I've kind of covered this, week after week, but it's getting smaller because I need to give Fred as much time as possible. Reflect is a plugin. It publishes models from currently Revit, SketchUp, and Rhino, and coming soon in our next release is Navisworks, and that's where you can pull in ArchiCAD, Civil 3D, Plant 3D, Bentley, DGN files, IFC files, FBX, and the list goes on. It's great. It's a great place to get most files and models through in a more direct way. Premise is stored online for now, and then it goes through to a viewer. And in our next release, we'll also open up the cloud viewer in a beta form for the rest of the year, so you're able to start looking at how you can deliver your content through the cloud, through somebody that's on 4G connection, 5G if you're lucky, or just on your own Wi-Fi, and you just want to get the data from design through to an end user. Okay, so we're focusing really on getting this custom viewer made, and it's where you kind of make it your own. PowerPoint's doing its own thing here. Let's remove this, and it's really start to take ownership. Do what you want it to do, not what we give you. Yeah, use what we give you as a baseline, and then add functionality. And by using metadata, your scripts and other type of things that you can develop would work with it, and work with any model that you push into there. And you can use it in all the different devices, headsets and caves and whatever else is out there in a concurrent fashion. And then because of the metadata, linking it with other web services to combine data from other sources into really what is a navigation hub. And that's mainly because of this metadata. It is the key join to data join a model through to anything else that you need. Okay, we've mainly focused on Revit in these webinar series, but the same applies to all these products where you can get metadata in your model output and get to this customer experience. Just to remind you, we have one more session next week, and we're going to look to extend the series. But next week is all about creating one-to-one scale augmented reality. So it's basically continuing the steps of what you learned the last couple of weeks, but then being able to scale and position yourself in the real world based on a object tracking based system by putting an image in a real world situation and being able to lock onto that target. So we're going to get into the meat of it now, and we're going to pass to Fred to look at creating this kind of unique viewer and give you the base knowledge to do it. However, I've made one just to show you that, you know, you don't have to be a programmer to do this. I'm not a programmer in the slightest. If you can do programming, you can get away with a lot more. However, what I've used here is I got an asset off our Unity asset store called WeatherMaker, and I've used this and combined it into Reflect and made it my own viewer, as you see. And this gives me some little things, because today's feeling really warm and sunny in the UK, which is very rare. And, you know, I'd like to take it back to where it should be, which is generally a little bit miserable, cloudy, rainy, damp, windy, foggy, and all these kind of things. So this is a little bit of fun, but it's also giving you that extra level of, you know, the environment it could be in. So that was my little bit of fun, but it just proves that, you know, with a little bit of Unity knowledge, you don't even need to know code too much. You should be able to create your own viewer experience. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Fred. So Fred, are you ready to go?
I am, yes.
Excellent. Okay, well, I'm going to stop my share and pass it over to you. Okay, you've got control.
All right. So, hello everyone. This is the pretty much the scene where we've left it off from the previous weeks. If you remember, we actually had brought in the model. We had swapped a few materials. We had brought this nice skybox with animated clouds. We had made an animated sunrise and sunset. We've added audio files to add a few birds tweets and audio files, and to get some music in. We also used other things. And just a quick thing that I wanted to show you there is that there's also a workflow that allows you to create movies, because I know that a lot of people would actually want to bring the content using Reflect, to bring all the content inside of Theater to be able to create the movies that you could create offline, but that you can also create online using Cinemachine and Timeline and the recorder and the audio mixer, all of that at the same time. But this is most probably going to be the topic of another webinar. Before we start, I would like to show you where we're going in this session with a custom viewer. So you probably hear the sound. So I'm just going to decrease the level of the music there, and then I'm going to load a model in this custom viewer that we're actually going to create in this session. So what we can see in this session, in this viewer, you can see that we have a car. This car does not exist in. Let's just turn the bird's twits down a little bit. We have a car. This car is not in the Revit model. It's actually what's in the Revit model is simply this. It's a small box that says, I want a car here with some custom metadata that we use instead of the editor to replace objects with custom objects. There's also some trees that we can turn on and off. There's also characters, like 3D characters. So if we just get through real quick, there we'll see that we have wandering characters. It's all the same character, the Ethan character that we've got from the standard assets, the samples, and we can also turn on and off the navigation mesh, which allows us to see where the characters can walk, and we can also turn on and off the other characters as well. Another thing that we can see is that we also have added the ability to change the position of the sun, so I can change the north offset and the time of day. Like this. I can also change the strength of the wind that's blowing into the trees. And if we go somewhere like very early, then only the lighting from the Revit model is going to show, and which allows me then to also turn on and off the lighting of that building. So that's what we have in this custom viewer, and this allows us to touch on several things, on adding new features to a viewer, and also on adding all the controls and to get them to fit nicely in the existing viewer user interface. So let's get back into Unity, and what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to get into the demo scenes. To get started, I want to touch on prefabs, and the reason I want to touch on prefabs is because the existing Reflect viewer takes advantage a big deal about the Unity prefabs. So I want to show you there some workflow that the prefabs allows you to do instead of the Unity editor. If you're an Autodesk user, you could consider prefabs to be pretty much like Xrefs. So a prefab allows us to store a game object as an external object and to use it across several scenes or across several projects. But there's more to it. So let's take a look at what we have here. For example, I have got this spotlight here, and now let's picture that I want to have several of those spotlights in the same scene, but I would want to be able to edit them in the very same way. So I can always select more than just one spot and then change the other spot angle and the color and all this. But then this would be, this could be difficult to manage, especially if I want to have several instances of the same spot in different scenes, for example. So the thing that I can do with prefabs is to drag and drop an object. So it's basically storing a game object no longer in the scene, but in a folder as an asset that I can then reuse. So now this spotlight is an instance of the prefab I have here. So if I duplicate it a couple of times, like this, for example, then I can take this spotlight here and I can change the angle, and it's going to change the value for all of them. They will all inherit the parameters of the original instance. I can also change the intensity, for example, and things like that. Now, there's also more to it because I can also add what we call overrides, which means that they can all be the same, yet a little bit different, which means that, for example, if I wanted this spotlight to be of a different color, then I could make it a different color. And what you can see here is that it highlights the color parameter in blue, which means that this parameter is different. It's different, it's an override, and it's different from the original, which also allows me to compare the original with the instance. which means that from now, if I were to change, for example, the spot angle of the original prefab, it would change for all of them, except that this one would still be blue. Now, if I wanted to take this blue one here and make another prefab out of it, I could also make a prefab variant. And making a prefab variant allows me to say that I want to create some sort of a hierarchy in prefabs. So I could call this Spotlight Blue, which means that now I can take this one here and I can put it over there. And now if I were to change this blue to maybe another blue like this, then this would change the two instances of that same prefab. But if I want to change the spot angle of the original prefab, then this is going to change it for all of them. This is the prefab system inside of Unity. It allows you to share, to store and to share an asset or a game object as an asset and use it across several scenes and several projects as well. It really is a time saver when it comes to work with like objects that you're going to reuse over and over again. Now, the reason I'm showing this right now is that when you want to create a custom viewer, then you're going to use the reflect prefab system. So let's start with this. Like this is pretty much what we had in the previous session. I just got rid of the model because the idea now is that we want to be able to have, instead of having a standalone application that contains both the model and the logic, we want a runtime viewer that is only that's only going to be made of the logic, and so that it's able to load the model.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Jack.
All right.
So it
well,
looks like it's back.
It's finding its way back. Yeah, I couldn't actually touch a thing then on Zoom. So yeah, it's late in the day today. Fred, are you still there in some form?
Fred might have froze.
Are we going back? Hey, nothing like live, eh? Hey, maybe we do a couple of questions. Hey, Tony, have you got that poll available that we do? Seeing as we've got Zoom working. Just a question about people getting their Reflect and Pro trial licenses, because I've had 2 people on here that are asking about it. So, Tony, if you're able to put that poll up, maybe you can just get that done. Just for anybody that's still waiting on a Reflect and Pro trial that wants one. We have been emailing those things out the last couple of weeks in heavy numbers, but it's not an automated process. So we don't want to miss anybody that wants this to use it. What Fred's been showing up to now has been purely in Unity Pro. You could do a lot with just any model that you bring into Unity as well, just even the free version, in terms of lighting, materials, and interactive components. However, today is really focused to wrap this content up into a Reflect viewer, which is then taking data directly from the design sources. So, so just bear that in mind. I think Fred is logging out and coming back in. He seems to have logged himself out here. So, Tony, have you got that poll? Because I think it'd be good to get get that done while we just wait for Fred to re-emerge from Paris.
Open it up
While,
right now.
while we wait, I also have a couple questions from Q&A that we can start answering. One of them was, what's the type of data that is downloaded by the Reflect viewer, and how can I get that data into the Unity editor? It's a simple answer, really. The type of data is not any kind of file format, it's raw data. To get that data into the Unity editor, there's a Reflect panel once you install the Reflect package that you can simply download the data there, and it creates a prefab for you. And from that point, you just work on it as you would any other prefab in the Unity editor.
Any other questions, Dave? That's good.
Yeah, does the AR usage of Unity reflect part of the webinar today? Unfortunately not. We're going to cover that next week.
Exactly, that's the fun one. Taking
That's
it
the
beyond
fun one.
tabletop.
I know.
Hey, I've used it. I've used it at home. It's brilliant. So yeah, it really starts to spice it up to what you're able to do with any model. Throw a just a location marker in your model in at least Revit. Position yourself in the right place, and boom, it works. I've got some nice field trials going on at the moment, so looking forward to see some results at a real construction site. There are actually some open. Very good. Any others? I can actually show the import of Reflect if we wish. If we're still waiting for Fred to join. Do you want me to do that?
Another question, does Reflect cost money to take models to import into Unity? So the answer is yes, Reflect is a yearly subscription. It's $690 a year. It allows you to not only import data directly into Unity, but also sync that data directly into a runtime application to create custom viewers like Fred was showing us before he dropped off and crashed Zoom.
He'll be back. Here's a little bit unplanned coverage while he gathers himself. So I'm in the Unity editor. I'm not like Fred. I'm not that advanced. However, how do you get these main components? It was shown weeks ago, but of course, if you've missed maybe some of these webcasts, of course, you're picking up as you go. So there's two ways to get to this, really. So to grab the Reflect piece itself, you need to be in 2019.1, 2, or 3. Don't go beyond that because we're not supporting it yet. You need to go in what we call preview packages. It's not a preview. It's just the only way we could slide it in here to give you access sooner rather than later. You'll get a few moments for this thing to refresh, and then we'll come down all the way down to Unity Reflect here and hit install. Takes a few moments, except two things that come up. And with that, you'll then see a Reflect menu item. When you press that button, you'll actually get this little menu here, which I've actually docked in my case. And it's the same list of projects that you get as you see in the viewer, as we'll get to later. And then you can import them. I won't import it live, but here's some I prepared earlier. So if we get the house that I showed earlier, you will get a nested prefab, textures, materials, and you just drag and drop the thing in the scene. Okay, so give it a second. Of course, it's my little computer. Oh, maybe just do it correctly, might help. And there we have the same, got the model. And when you click on these objects, you're not just getting a mesh, you're actually getting metadata as well. So if we click on here, you see all the metadata that was stored in Revit, SketchUp Rhino, and eventually other fun things such as Navisworks. Okay, so that's how you get it. You obviously got object names as game objects, but then you got the granularity of the metadata, which has been one of the missing things here. The other thing is to get started on the viewer, just to give Fred a little bit of time. So in fact, I'll just remove this. That's just to bring the model in, add content, things that we've done the last couple of weeks. But to actually work on this runtime, if we scroll a little bit further down, you have what we call packages in here. Come to Unity Reflect, come to runtime, and you see the Reflect runtime prefab. Drag and drop that thing on here. maybe look at it in 2D, because this is literally just user interface, nothing more, because that is actually what you're going to create with a few extra bits and pieces. So this is a prefab with all the scripts and content to hook up to the Reflect system, all the canvases. So we remember doing canvases last week, buttons, user interface, windows, AR mode is in here, VR mode, all the things that's been required to build this application. And the idea, if you remember, is to go and make it your own. So Fred will come back to this, hopefully he's appearing, and you add your images, your sliders, your buttons, add some unique scripts in your project in here to detect metadata and then to function. So obviously, well worth watching back these videos. So Tony, have we got Fred back? Just otherwise I'll carry on. I'll take over today.
Looks like Fred is back.
He's back. Thank God for that. Fred,
Yes,
are you there?
I'm back. Yes, I'm back. For a second, I thought that I had a computer like crash, and it's like my whole computer just crashed. Like
no, it was Zoom. Zoom destroyed all of us. I couldn't even touch it neither. So I'm going to stop the share and give you back all the controls. I've just been showing them how to import the Reflect package, how to import a Reflect model, and also a recap of where the Reflect runtime prefab is, which I'm sure you're about to get onto.
Yeah, thanks so much for touching on all this while I was going through all the steps of rebooting and relaunching the editor. So I was touching on the prefabs because like we said, the Reflect viewer comes as a prefab itself. And so that everything you need is inside of one package that you can easily drag and drop inside of a scene. So what we have in this scene is pretty much what we had from what we had done in last week. So we have the animated sky. We also have a wind zone for the trees to be animated. We also have a daylight system, so that the daylight system is animated with a timeline, so that it's easy to just go over the time, and we'll also have the post-processing volume in here. So to do a custom viewer, what we need to do is to go in, like Jack just showed, we need to go and select the Reflect prefab that we find in here and drag and drop it inside of our scene here. Now, because the Reflect prefab contains already a camera, I don't need the default camera that I had in the scene, so I can just get rid of it. And now I want to make this prefab, I want to make it my own, right? So I want to own the content. So I'm going to go to prefabs, and I'm going to rename this prefab, and I'm going to call this custom viewer, like this. And I'm going to drag and drop it back into the assets so that it becomes a new prefab. And I'm going to make an original prefab so that it doesn't even rely on anything else. It's just a copy of it. Now, what I see in here is that I've got, like Jack was showing, we have the canvases for all the different UI tabs and menus, and we also have the managers that contain all the scripts that will connect to the Reflect server and authenticate the user and all this that we're going to hook up to listen to events and things like that. And what we want to do here is to actually take those two objects, like the daylight and the wind zone that I actually made prefabs themselves. I want to drag and drop them into the viewer so that they become part of that prefab as well. It's usually good practice to put everything inside of a prefab to avoid like orphan links, especially when we deal with events and things like that. Now, what we can see is that those two objects will come up with a little plus icon next to them, which means that they are not part of the prefab yet. They are part of the overrides. So if I jump into the prefab, I no longer see them. I will only get them in the scene because they were added to the prefab hierarchy, but they're not yet part of the prefab itself. So what I can do here is then right click on the object and go to added game object and then say, apply to prefab reflect custom viewer. And I'll do the same with the wind zone, like this, so that this is going to embed those prefabs into the into the main prefab. And one thing that we can also see here is that in Unity, prefabs can be nested. So you can have prefabs inside of prefabs inside of prefabs, which allows you to really split things into smaller chunks that you can easily reuse in different places. Now, what we can see here is that I'm going to go into a 2D view, and I can see that we have the different canvases. So when we start the viewer, the first thing that I can do here is simply start the viewer to see what we get. So we get the usual splash screen, then we get the project view, and then from there I can load a project, and then I also have the other icons. Now what we can see here is that when I get into the canvases, I'll find all the different canvases. So the first one is the project canvas, the AR mode, the sync canvas, the metadata canvas, settings, and so on. So if I want to add some more stuff to this, like for example, if I wanted to add some controls to be able to control the sun, and so basically just controlling the animation of the light system and maybe the orientation as well, then if I wanted to do this, then I would need to add one of those canvases. And the easiest way to do this is to simply just to select one of them and duplicate it. And as you do this, then you can see that I've duplicated. So same thing, it shows that it's added there. And this is also a prefab in itself. So it's a nested prefab. So what I want to do there is to also own this one. So I'm going to unpack that prefab, which means I want this prefab to be my own stuff. And then I will also apply it to the reflect prefab so that it sits in there. So I'm going to jump inside of the prefab itself, and then I'm going to position it next to settings, and I'm going to rename this as daylight canvas, like this. And now when I open this daylight canvas, what I see is that on the daylight canvas, there's a component that's called settings top menu. So it's obviously very specific to handling the settings. So I don't want this, but I can see that it has some references to the button background, the UI, and so on, so that we know what it does and how it does it. So I'm just going to get rid of that component there. And I see that there's the button background. So it's the black dark label that we have as a background. And then there's the button, which is more like an icon. And then there's the UI, which is the area of where we want to display all the options when we select this button. Then there's a big mask, which is there to handle the clicks, especially useful when you're on mobile devices, because it's somehow expected by the user that whenever you click anywhere but on the controls, you just want to get out of the currently selected mode. So this is the mask, and this is what it does. So it's not visible. It's just like slightly opaque, and it's there mostly to handle the clicks. And then we have this button list control, which is the control that allows us to switch between the different quality settings. And this is something that we don't want because we're going to replace it with our own UI. But to be able to control this daylight canvas, I need to add a top menu option or a top menu component on this. So what I can do there is to simply just use the top menu, which is the generic version of the top menu. So it's simply going to handle the visibility of the UI. And I'm going to give it the button background and the button so that it's very easy to set up. And I'm going to tell it the UI, which is basically what is it I want to activate or to enable whenever I click on this button. And then I need to do to remap a few things, which is like what is happening when I click on the button. Well, what's happening when I click on the button is that I actually go to the top menu and tell the top menu that it was clicked or activated. And same thing on the mask. I want to drag and drop this there. a couple of times like this, and I want to tell it there to go and deactivate, and also I wanted to show the buttons. So basically deactivate yourself and show the buttons again. This is what happens whenever you click on the mask or in the background outside of the UI controls. Now, this is going to work like very simply, but the question is, what do we want to add in this UI, in this menu? Then this is where like using prefabs is very useful, because this allows you to share some existing content that you have in a standalone app, for example, and to quickly merge that into a custom Reflect viewer that you want to work on. So for example, there I can just go in the panels, and I've already made myself a delight panel that I can simply put as a child of the UI, and it contains 3 sliders. It uses all the features that we touched on last week, such as the content size filter to automatically adjust the size of that component based on its content. Also the vertical layout group to automatically lay out things vertically in this order. And there we have 3 sliders. We have a north direction slider that goes from minus 180 to plus 180 to control the direction of the sun system. Then I also have a time of day slider that goes from 0 to 12, which is in seconds, the length, the duration of the timeline that I've used for the time of day. And the wind strength slider that simply goes from 0 to 1. Now, what I want to do there is to hook them up to what they're meant to control. So I can easily just select this object there, this slider, and then drag and drop the daylight. And I'm going to tell this object to control there. I'm just going to select the daylight, and I'm going to add a couple of components. The first component that I need is expose transform, which is part of the samples that we're adding to the Reflect extensions to easily expose the position and rotation of an object so that they can be controlled through a slider. And also I want a playable director time controls, which allows me to scrub through a timeline using a slider as well. Now with this, I can easily select the this slider here, and then just go for expose transform and choose the local Euler angles Y, so that this first slider is going to rotate the whole sun system. Then I'm going to take this other slider here, and I'm going to drag and drop this object there and go for the playable director time controls and use the time. And same thing with the wind strength slider. I'm going to drag and drop the wind zone. And for this, I don't need any specific script, because the wind zone will expose its wind main parameter just like this. So very simply, just like that, I can easily add existing controls. These are controls that I could have used in a standalone app. I can easily just bring them in and merge that into the existing UI of Reflect. And so what we can do right now is just try this out and make sure that it works. Right, so I can just simply just go to this, for example, and then I can now change the north offset and time of day. With the time of day, I can see that this is going to change the direction of the sun without even having to load a project. All right, so another thing that I want to do is also to change the button. So I'm just going to jump back in here, and I'm going to change this, and I'm going to do a quick search in there to select a different icon, like that. And I'm just going to do this again. All right, and now with this, what we can also do is to then start thinking about the features that we want to add, and especially the specific features that we want to add on top of the on top of the project and the geometry. So one thing to note is that we have this root game object, and this root game object is the parent object under which all the incoming geometry and all the incoming objects are going to be instantiated. So it's fair to say that when we add a component to this game object, it knows about all the incoming geometry, and we can easily just use very easy C# features to go and parse the hierarchy. This is actually also something that we find in here. So it's set up in the sync manager. You'll find the root transform. So this is also something that you could change if you wanted to organize the hierarchy in a different way. But on this root game object, I'm going to add the lights control script that we had used in one of the first session. This script is a very, very simple script. Like it's only a few lines of C# to easily just go and turn off or on all the lights that we find in a model. And this allows me to then have another control to easily switch on and off all the lights that I have in the model. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back in my prefabs and in the canvases, and what I'm going to do there is take this BIM lights canvas, and I'm going to take it around here. And with this, you can see that it's a custom but yet very generic top menu that allows you to toggle things on and off from the toolbar. And this allows you to simply just pass a method there as a parameter to the onstate changed event. So what I can do there is simply say that whenever this is turned on or off, it's on by default because all the lights are going to be on by default, and this component will also be on. But now I can just drag and drop this object into this control and say that I simply want to turn the lights control enabled or disabled whenever I click on this button, right? So that's fairly simple to add. The idea, I guess, is to fit as much as you can. If you wanted to do like a major overhaul of the user interface of Unity Reflect, then you could also create your own user interface. But if you want to fit inside of the existing user interface, then it's also very easy to just reuse the existing components and create your slight variations, such as this toggle top menu that you can also reuse because it's going to be part of the Reflect extensions as well. And another thing that we may want to do is to replace the trees. That's something that we had done inside of the editor by using some sort of a batch system. But if we want to do this at runtime, this is also something that we can easily do. So I'm going to go and create an empty game object, and I'm going to call this trees. And on this game object, I'm going to go and find a component that's called object pairing. And this gives me pretty much the same controls that I had in this metadata toolbox, but this is going to happen at runtime. So that's the only difference. And there, what I'm going to do is to go in the prefabs, and I'm going to go and find this broadleaf tree with birds. So it's got like you can see that it's a variant, and it's got birds audio sources in there. And I'm going to say that I want to replace every object of which the category is planting. I want to match the height, and I want to say that every tree that is going to be shorter than 1.4 meters is not going to be instantiated because I don't want to turn like big trees into shrubs. So now with this, then one of the things that I want to do is to also be able to add some control to be able to control the visibility of those trees. So this is also something that I would do with another canvas, which is the options canvas. And I'm going to put this next to the light canvas like this. And this options canvas, it's fairly similar to the quality settings, but in a way that it's customizable. So you can add options data, and every options data has a title, description, an icon, the initial state, and a set of events. So with this one, for example, the first one is trees, and I can easily just drag and drop this object in there and say that whenever this is toggled on and off, I want to toggle this tree object on and off, and so it's easily going to turn or deactivate or reactivate all the trees. Now with this, there's another thing that I wanted to touch on that we had done inside of the editor. It's to replace the materials. So replacing materials at runtime is also something that we can do in different matters. Like we could do this by name. We could do this by reusing the mappings and everything. So same thing. I'm just going to put this on the root game object. I've got a materials override, another option or another thing that we put in the reflect extensions. This allows us to say that we want to replace materials, and we replace materials using a custom type of asset, which is the material mappings. So the material mappings, I can use this glass here. So I'm just going to use this. And this is a material mapping. So basically it's a name, or it's a collection of names and materials. So that allows me to say whatever contains the name glass will be replaced with that material. And I could also have created like a much more elaborated materials replacement. So for example, if I wanted to do a white box option, that would automatically turn everything but glass into a white material, like white cardboard like material, and everything that is made of glass into glass, then this is also something I could easily do with that. And so with this, then I want to say the match type is A contains B. So if the incoming name of the material contains glass, then I want it to be replaced with the glass. And I could also put that as as asset bundles, which is something else that I want to touch on later. But I could also put this on a server, for example, so you could create a huge collections of materials and material replacements ready to be used across different viewers or different projects. Now with this I also want to touch on a few other things. Nav meshes, that's another thing that we had done. We had added nav meshes, we had created nav meshes, and we had added characters inside of the editor, and this is also something that we can do inside of the custom viewer. So I'm going to rename this as characters, and with this, I'm just going to reset this like that. And on this, I'm going to add a navmesh scatter object, and which is also going to add a reflect nav mesh builder. So the job of the reflect nav mesh builder is to build a nav mesh with all the incoming geometry from reflect. It's got some filters. It uses metadata to tell what is what. So for example, we can tell please ignore the doors, because I still, like, even if the doors are visible, I want the characters to be able to walk through doors. And I ignore the ceilings because it makes no sense to have characters walking on ceilings anyway. And these are non-walkable objects, like such as walls and things like that. And everything else is just going to be considered a walkable surface. And I'm also going to say that I want to add mesh colliders so that the characters can properly interact with the environment. And from there, the nav mesh scatter object, I'm going to go back in there, and I'm going to take this character, which is our Ethan character, to which we've added a random sort of random patrol behavior, so that it walks to a random destination, then wait a little bit, and then walks to another random destination again. And this is the number of characters that I want to instantiate in the project. So likewise, I can then go back to the options, and in the options, I have the character options, but I could also add as many options as I want. But I've got this one here, and I'm going to drag and drop the characters in there, and then say simply that I want to set active. So I want to deactivate or reactivate this object, because all the objects are going to be instantiated as children, as child objects of that object. So deactivating this object will also deactivate the overall hierarchy. So let's actually try this already and see what's happening when I load a project in there. So I'm going to load this project here. All right, so it's going to instantiate everything. All right, so now I've got my walking characters. They walk randomly pretty much everywhere. And I can also go to some place. So let's go to the parking lot where we find this object here. And if I select this object, what you can see here is that in Revit, we've added some custom parameters, which is asset bundle URL and asset bundle name. And this is the path to the asset bundle, like basically in a directory structure, where am I to find the object that I want? And this is the name of the object that I want. So basically this is like saying, I want, instead of having this cube, I want to have a sports car. Now, to do this inside of the editor, this is the asset bundles are along with the addressables also, which is new, is what we use for downloadable content in video games, for example, when you want to inject more data without having to rebuild the whole thing. So this is also something that you can use, I guess, which is very useful when you want to merge things from the architecture industry and also things from the mechanical industry. For example, I know that someone has asked if you could use Inventor with Reflect. Well, for example, if you wanted to have Inventor objects inside of a Revit building, which makes a lot of sense when you're dealing with a factory or any sort of facility like this, then you could actually use Pixies, for example, to create asset bundles and automatically push the data inside of a Reflect custom viewer that would stream the data from Revit or from Navisworks, and yet be able to support other custom-made objects such as cars or characters and things like that. But you can also use asset bundles. So asset bundles inside of Unity is very simple to use. Basically, you just isolate the object that you want to put into a bundle. So for example, there I would just go and select this object here, and there would what we can see here is that we have the asset bundle. So this is where we add the asset bundle. So I can create a new bundle, and this is where I give the directory structure. So I can put all the vehicles in one directory. I can also have variants, so that I may have like a different version for iPad and Android devices, and a higher resolution version for PC, for example. And when I once I've done this, then all I need to do is to go and build the asset bundles, which is basically like building the viewer, but instead of building the viewer, it just builds the content that we have, that we want to have as a separate content. And then this is going to be put into the streaming assets. Streaming assets are assets that are just going to remain as is, like for example, videos that you want to be able to stream inside of the viewer. They don't need to be packaged as a custom format. They can just stay as they are, as like MP4 or something like this. And then the asset bundles are just the same. They're pre-made components. So with this, one of the things that I can do here is then create another game object like this, and I'm going to call it asset bundles, like that. And then I'm going to add a pair asset bundle component. The job of the pair asset bundle component is simply to look for objects in Revit or in the model that contain those URL names, like the URL and the name of objects, and to spawn the equivalent game object that matches that, that parameter. So there, I'm just going to rename this with the proper name that we had set inside of Revit, like this. And then likewise, I can also go back to the options, and in the options, then I want to close the trees and close the extra objects, and then drag and drop this asset bundle in here, and then tell it to activate and deactivate this this game object instead, and then we're done. Now with this, then let's just run this again and see what it does. So I can now open the project again, and it's going to do the exact same thing, but this time we should have the car being instantiated right there, because the this component just found in the metadata, it found the asset bundle name and asset bundle URL, and it found the object that we wanted, and so it just instantiated it. So this example, for example, this allows you to have like RPC-like objects inside of Revit, but you can create all different kind of custom objects that will link into the viewer. You can add rich objects, like very detailed objects, animated objects, and for like a more visually appealing result inside of the viewer. Well, it's not really the topic inside of Revit, then you can add those custom metadata to custom family objects inside of Revit, and then they'll turn into the into their pair in the custom viewer. Now another thing, I see that we're pretty much on time. So another thing that I wanted to touch on is the customization of the splash screen. So last week I touched on how you can use the splash screen method, like the splash screen function inside of Unity. So one thing that we can do is then simply just get rid of the existing splash screen that we have from the viewer to replace it with our own. And to do this, it's actually fairly simple. We'll find the splash screen object here. So I'm going to unpack this, this prefab so that I can modify it without changing the original. And then I can take this one here. I see that it has an audio source. I'm just going to get rid of that audio source. I also see that it has a couple of events that need to happen. So I'm going to replace this with an onStart event, which is basically just going to happen at the very beginning. And then I'm going to add those two listeners. And I'm going to take this, there, and there. And I'm going to call the session on splash screen complete, and the login resolver also on splash screen complete. So basically I'm telling that the splash screen is done immediately, and I can remove this this component. So now whenever I start, then I should no longer have the splash screen, and I'm going to rely on the splash screen that we have from the build settings. Now, when it comes to build the final application, it's actually fairly simple. Then you just go into File, Build Settings. In the Build Settings, you want to add the open scene. So you add the scene that you have currently opened, and make sure that you target the platform that you want to target, such as Windows or Mac or Android and so on. And then you go to the player settings and make sure also there that you have all the proper options, such as making sure that the full screen mode is going to be windowed. Give the default resolution by default of the window. Make sure that the window is resizable and things like that. So you have like lots of different options. Replace the icon and all this. And then once you're done with that, then you build your app, and then you end up with something like this.
There's also .NET 4 as well to check off in that panel.
That's right.
Because it's set to 2 for some reason.
Right, and so so the beauty of this also is that once you've made a custom viewer, then everything that you've done, there's a little bit of a overhead, to be honest, when it comes to do something to work fully automated. Like, when you do things inside of the editor, then, you have the ability to go and tweak everything manually. But the beauty of doing something that is fully automated means that it then works out of the box with every model. So for example, the viewer that I had made with and that we were testing on that school project, if I now want to load another building that I was recently given by our my Korean peers, then I can use this building instead and then it's going to do the exact same thing. It's going to replace the glass materials. It's going to instantiate characters. It's going to use the animated sky and sun, and it's going to turn to tweak the lighting and everything. So everything I have in here will work on every project that you may want to bring inside of a viewer, and that's really what is unique, because it means that you no longer have to rebuild an app every single time you want to work on a different project, or every single time you want to deal with a project update. So the project updates, fine, you don't need to update your application. And if you want to work with another BIM project, you don't have to update the application either. A few other things also that I forgot to mention, but the post-processing volume, it's actually already in the prefab. So when you go to the, where is it? There, the screen mode, there you'll find the free cam controller. So for example, you may want to choose deferred so that it uses deferred shading, as we saw that it brings a much better quality out of the box. And also instead of using the post-processing that we find here, then I can also just go and choose to use a different post-processing that suits my likings better. You can also choose to use a different anti-aliasing method, for example, such as sub-pixel anti-aliasing or temporal anti-aliasing, which can give better results. So it's yours. That's the idea of this. Like you start from exactly what we ship, and you can you can make it yours and customize it all the way you want. That's I think the main takeaway from this session. I guess that's pretty much it for today. So next week, I'm going to hand it off to my peer, Brian Bear, who's going to touch on the one-to-one scale AR. So you definitely want to see this. It's going to be pretty interesting, and we'll most likely have other webinars on other topics soon enough.
Good stuff. Thank you, Fred. Let's wrap it up. So, well, good recovery as well, Fred, because yeah, Zoom killed us all, and you even had to do a restart to get it back on. So, all good stuff, and managed to even finish near enough on time. So, as Fred mentioned, one-to-one scale AR is really cool, really fairly straightforward as well. So now you combine all these skills. You've got a custom viewer. And then take it on and add some more functionality. So got this session next week, and yeah, we'll look to do some more. Hopefully enjoying these things. I know there's a lot in here, but you know, go back on the videos on demand, slow it right down, and just go a little bit at a time, and learn what Fred's showing here. He's giving you some major in-depth information, probably a little bit quick, as I do myself. But yeah, just go back over it, nice pace, and you come through there. So trials, we'll make sure everybody's got the trials. There's a few new people in today. The project, Fred, you're wrapping this up now. You've got it kind of to a complete stage. You're going to make the project runtime available. Also, we mentioned Reflect extension. So we're almost ready to drop that out. So we've got everybody's emails and contacts. So we'll make sure we get back to everybody with this stuff in the coming days, next week at least. But if you get your trial, make something and send whoever sent you the trial some images back, a video. We'd love to see what you've done with it. Even if it's just a hobby project, don't mind. We'd like to see what you're coming up with as your own kind of custom viewer and functionality based around Reflect, especially using metadata and all the kind of things we've done. So please come back to us next Wednesday. Same time, same place. Hopefully Zoom behaves itself, and we'll be here. And that is us today. We're almost on time, so I'll let you get on with the rest of your day and look forward to seeing you next Wednesday. Have a good week.
Thank you.